Hi, my name is Sandy Finnerty, and I'm here today to talk about candle making and lighting in homes. Now, when we need light at home to read or to do a puzzle or play a game, it's pretty darn easy. You just go to the wall and you flip the switch, or you go to the lamp and you turn it on. Very easy. However, we have electricity. Now, before electricity, people couldn't do that. They had to make their own lights. Well, how did they do that? Well, as you know, Native Americans have been living here in Illinois for thousands of years, and they mostly used fires. They would have a fire outside, and people would sit around the fire and try to do handwork or things close up, or talk, or have games or ceremonies. And even, believe it or not, even inside, they didn't have fireplaces, but they would build a fire on the floor in their home, and then they'd have a little hole up on the ceiling, and hopefully the smoke would come up, but it was pretty darn smoky, and it was hard to see. Now we had, as you know, we had people come here, European Americans come here from the East Coast of the United States and the colonies, and they moved out and settled in this area. Now these folks, these settlers, were used to having candles, and they used them for many years, and so they decided they would use candles also for light. And what they would do also, they tended to have fireplaces in their homes. I mean, they had fires outside so they could see outside at night, but also fireplaces in their homes. And they would use that light from the fireplaces. I don't know if maybe you've been to the Lincoln Museum in Springfield. If you have, there's a wonderful setup there which shows a model of Abraham Lincoln, life-size. He looks like he's real, on the floor in the cabin, and he has a book and he's reading just by the light of the fireplace, but that doesn't give too much light. So they used that, but they also used candles. Now, we're going to make some candles today, but the candles that we make are going to be different from what they had, but you'll get the idea. And I think some of you might have even been here to the museum to make candles yourself, or have made them someplace else, and it's a great experience. Now, what we do is, maybe we could take a close-up look of what we have in here. This is hot wax, and we're using this. This is what it looked like before we melted it. You can see it's just all liquid, but it was solid before we started heating it. And we also put a little color in it here. The settlers wouldn't have used color, but we use color. Now, what the settlers would do is they would attach a wick. This is going to be the candle wick to a rod of some sort. They might even have several on one rod. And then the idea was they would dip it in quickly and then out. And you can see we have some wax starting to build up on that wick. Pretty good. Now I'm going to cool it off because this takes a while to cool. I'm going to put it in the water over here to make it cool faster. And I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, hang it on this rack to cool for a few minutes. And we'll do another one. Right down in. Come on, go all the way down. There you go. And then out. Now if I just dip this again right away, the wax that's in there is so warm and hot, it would just melt all this wax, and the wax wouldn't cool and build up on the candle. So that's why we have to cool it in between dips. Straighten it out a little there, let it sit. And one more. Same thing, dip it in. Get it all around there. Bring it out. Shake it a little. And cool it. And then sit it on the rack. Let's see, I think we'll do it this way. Now hopefully that first one we did is cool enough. Oh, it's a lot cooler. It's just like room temperature, and it's hard. So I'm going to dip this one again. This is the first one. The trick is it's going to go down and up. I'm not going to leave it there because I don't want the wax that's already on the wick to melt. So it's just dipping, and you can see it's a little thicker. This is the first one we did, just 2 dips, and then this is the second one. You can see that we're already building up wax on our candle. Cool it off in the water. Let it cool on the rack. Okay, here's the second one. You see how that gets darker, thicker looking? Cool it and put it on the rack. And then I have the third one. See how thin the wax is? Ready? Ooh, thicker. Cool it off and put it in on the rack. Now, I could keep going and going. So we've done 2 dips on all of these. So I'm going to straighten this out and let's do one more. Well, it's getting bigger, but still pretty thin. We'd have to do a lot of dips to get this thicker. But that's what they had to do, the settlers. And so you get the idea. There. And we'll do one more. Now, one thing, we're using wax here. Believe it or not, this wax comes from the kind of oil that's in the ground. And it's refined and made certain ways, and we end up with this nice block of wax that we can melt. However, the settlers didn't have that. They didn't drill for oil and get oil and turn it into wax and other things. So what did they use? They had to use, unfortunately, they had to use fat from animals. They brought animals with them as they were coming across the plains here to settle in the Illinois and Prairie area. And what they did was, like, they had beef and they had sheep, cattle and sheep. And so they would have the animals, you know, in their farmyard and take care of them and so forth. And when it was time to slaughter those animals and eat the meat, they would do that, and then they would take the fat from the outside. Well, actually, the outside of the meat. It's under the skin, and maybe you've seen it on a steak, beef steak or something else. It's that white edge, white layer around the outside of the meat that you actually eat. And they had to get that off, cut that all off. Then they had to cook it very, very slowly and then strain it, and then they would use the fat, this fat. And after it was all ready to be used for candles, it was called tallow. It rhymes with shallow. And this tallow was good because that's what they had around to use. However, it was very smelly. When you had your candle and you lit your candle, it stunk, I will tell you. And the other thing about it is it was very smoky. When we have candles now, they're very, they don't have smoke involved. A little bit maybe, but it's not like you're coughing and everything to have a candle on in your room. But they were smoky. And the other thing is the wax that we use today burns, when we get a candle made from this, it will burn slowly. So this candle will last a long time. The tallow went zoom, just like that, whoop, and it was all burnt up before you could turn around almost. Because the wax was the tallow that made the candle was soft, not firm the way this is. I mean, this wax here, you can even pound on the table. This is solid. Now, I could keep going and going and going with this, but I think I'm going to stop here and let me show you a candle that's been dipped in this method. In fact, I think it was made right here at the museum. Here's one that's been dipped. Okay, we did these about, 5 or 6 times maybe? This one is maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing 25 times, 30 times. And then we would get a candle like this. This one we used purple wax for rather than the pink. So you can see this takes quite a while. Okay, I'll come back and finish those later, and hopefully they'll get nice and fat like this one. That's what they mostly use this tallow, as I said, from the animal fat. Some people use beeswax, and this is an example of a beeswax candle. It looks about the same, but it has a little indentations on the side. That's from a beehive. And the nice thing about these is they smell lovely. None of that stinky stuff. And they burn for a long, long time, and they don't smoke. As they burn, they not smoke all over the room. So these were great. The only thing is, they were very time-consuming to make and a lot harder to make, and so only the people who were really rich used these for the most part. So this is how they did the candle dipping. Let me show you another tool they used over here. These are candle molds. These are from our museum collection. So I'm going to use these gloves to touch them. These are all different kinds of molds that were used by different people, different times, as they figured out better ways to do it. And let's take this one. This is your basic candle mold. You can see this is made out of metal, a tin. And you'd have to have a tinsmith make this for you. And then you'd take the wax, the melted wax, or the melted tallow, I'm sorry, that the settlers would use. And instead of dipping, you would set the wicks up. Here's an example. They put wicks on this piece of wood to hang down, and then you'd put wicks the rest of the way here. Then I'd kind of slide it over to the side, and then very, very carefully pour that hot tallow into the holes. And then I'd move the stick back to the center so that wick would be right up straight. Then I would go on and pour into these. And you see, this mold would make a long, tall candle. So that was a heck of a lot quicker and a heck of a lot easier than going through the whole dipping process, because you could do this and then set it aside. And later on, you would just twist that candle a little bit, and then you could pull it right out, and you'd have a nice candle. There's other kinds of molds too. Let me put that down. I like this one. This is especially tall. I'd like a candle made out of this. Can you imagine? That would probably last for a little longer. Maybe have a little more light. I don't know. And there were all these other different kinds of molds too. Where's my candle? Well, the candle that we made was kind of lumpy. And these candles here, these are some that I brought from home that were purchased in the store. These are very smooth. And so they were made in a similar fashion in molds like this. So you can see how nice and straight they are and smooth they are. So that's what you'd get from the candle molds. And this was also I bought at the store. This is a different kind of candle. It's got the color in it. We put color in this one, and also we put some fragrance in it, so it has a nice smell when it burns. If you were living here on the Grand Prairie and you were a settler here, you might need to take a light outside to check on your animals. And so they would use lanterns. They'd put a candle inside, And then the holes up here allow air to get in there so the candle can burn. And then this lantern would also help if you went outside and it was windy, the candle wouldn't be blowing around and blowing out. So this was a very handy thing to use also. Well, thank you very much for joining me today at the museum, and I look forward to seeing you again.